Before I get into like specifics about basketball, because I'm sure you've thought about this because you are a thoughtful man. Do you have a theory as to why? Because it's not just a this year thing, it's a last year thing, it's a year before thing. Why the Atlantic Coast Conference has dipped in men's basketball to the point where I know Duke's great. I'm pretty sure Pitt and Clemson are good, although Pitt defied that yesterday by losing at Florida State by 12. I'm not sure I think North Carolina can be good. I'm not sure they are. I'm not sure anybody else is. You have a theory as to why?
Yeah, I have several. I don't want to repeat many that you've probably bandied about, talked about. I would offer a couple things. First of all, I think leadership of this league, and I go back to the former commissioner, and then I would extend that to our current commissioner, who, when he took the job, remember, publicly said, like, you can think this privately, and I think we're all thinking it privately, but to say that football eats first as one of the first things you said publicly in taking over the ACC, I think it's problematic, but it shows you kind of where John Swofford was at the end of his tenure and where Jim Phillips was when he took over, which is to say, I think they took the Atlantic Coast Conference and its basketball product for granted. I think they took for granted the fact that, obviously you have Duke Carolina, but you have, a league that have these other traditional powers. Basketball is really what built this conference, and I think they, saw dollar signs and got a little bit frightened about the growth of football and where the league was at there, and they let the product slip. The other thing I would add, Adam, is, and this is a reality when I go out and talk to coaches in other leagues. And then, you could talk to coaches within the ACC. They know this is going on. The league is being massively recruited against. All of the things that we know, whether it's the money gap between the SEC, Big Ten, and everybody else, whether it's facilities, whether it's the narrative that has developed about the league only getting 5 teams into the NCAA tournament, the quality of the product, the quality of the basketball being played. All of those things are being used in recruiting, be it in the portal or be it kids out of high school. The ACC is being battered by these other leagues when they're in a battle with a kid. And I think you're starting – now, that's not an overnight thing. That's something, to your point, that happens over a period of time. But the league has not been able to recover from that. And the other thing is there are too many – look, the bottom of this league has – we can argue how good it's ever been, but the bottom of this league has been incredibly problematic. And I think it has hurt the league optically. And that's another area where – you talk to Big 12 coaches, you now talk to SEC coaches. They talk about there being no bottom to those leagues. And, hey, come play in the SEC or come play in the Big 12 because you're going to be playing a ranked game every night. You're going to be playing an opposing quality opponent every night. That is not obviously the case in the ACC. I think it's an aggregate of a lot of things, but I think from a talent deficit perspective, the league is being crushed by other leagues in negative recruiting.
To your point about the SEC, there's no bottom of the SEC. Right now, in the net, South Carolina is the lowest ranked team, and I haven't seen what they are today, but as of Monday, they were 91st in the net. That is their 16th team, all 16 in the top 100. The ACC has 9 teams that are ranked worse than South Carolina, including 6 who are among the worst in the Power 5. Power 5 because the Big East is a power league. Big East hasn't been good either, by the way. It's interesting because people keep saying to me, Chris Spatola is joining us here from ESPN, college basketball analyst, expert. I'm calling him an expert, whether he likes it or not. People keep saying to me, oh, well, it's money. It's money. It's money. And I'm like, okay, I'm not saying that it's not money, but I would say then explain the Big 12 to me, because the Big 12 financially isn't in any better shape and probably not even as good a shape as the Atlantic Coast Conference. So It's not just money. So let me just throw a couple of other things. And by the way, I think right now, if you were Jim Phillips, would you sign for 5 teams making the NCAA tournament right now?
Oh my God! I'd sprint to that.
Right?
Hell yes.
Said sign for 5 right now. I think they'll get 4. I don't know that we're going to see 5. Although Louisville certainly played better of late. We had these legendary coaches, and it's not just about replacing Mike Krzyzewski. I think Duke has done pretty well there. I think Hubert Davis has done reasonably well at North Carolina. It's got a little bit of a Bill Guthridge feel to it for me, and I'm not trying to be disparaging. I think recruiting has been good, but not great. The portal has been good, but not awesome. It was great in year 1 with Brady Manick. And obviously Harrison Ingram last year was huge. Same thing with the kid from Notre Dame whose name escapes me because I'm old. But Syracuse hasn't done well replacing Jim Boeheim. And, of course, the end of his tenure wasn't great. Louisville hasn't done well replacing Rick Pitino. And there's been all sorts of things going on. I think Pat Kelsey is going to be very good, but it's not a guarantee. It's a difficult job, even though they've got huge pockets. And even in places like Georgia Tech, I think Kevin Keats is a good coach, but we haven't had great traction at NC State. How is Virginia going to replace Tony Bennett? And to be honest, Virginia, I mean, I don't know that Virginia's an amazing place, great school, but I don't know that there's huge, big-time pedigree there. I don't think the ACC has replaced coaches well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's prioritizing. Like Boston College, and look, I like Earl Grant. He's a nice man.
Mm-hmm.
But Boston College doesn't want to be good at basketball, or at least that's the indication. I mean, with the hires that they've made, and I guess they felt like they thought they wanted to be by firing Al Skinner all those years back.
Oh gosh,
but
right.
then the hires since, it's been a disaster. So, and look, you hit it right on the head. I mean, that's a big part of it. Coaching matters. I think it's one of the reasons. Like Louisville's a perfect example. You hire the right guy, and you're gonna you get a guy who's gonna roll out of bed and give you 25 wins in Pat Kelsey. What the SEC did, Adam, is they went out and they took some chances, and it's worked out now with NIL. But they took some chances on guys who were a little bit toxic, but they were being hired into a league that was okay with toxic. Like Bruce Pearl was incredibly toxic, cheated, but Auburn's like, do we really care? I mean, they hired him at a time when we didn't even know NIL. So the SEC was all in on like, we are going to be good at this. And they went out and they got those guys. The other thing I would also add is, look, again, nobody cares about the bottom teams in the ACC, but what the league has now done is it's premier programs or brands. Again, much of what we're doing now in college athletics is a game of optics. It's how your league is viewed. And all of a sudden, like Louisville becomes good. You lose Louisville for a few years. Now all of a sudden they've gotten, relatively good again. But now Virginia, who's won a national championship within the last handful of years, now they stink. Miami was in the Final Four, obviously a couple years ago.
2 years ago.
Now now they stink. Like, you can't get all of these programs to ascend and be the Syracuse. That program hasn't been good for a number. If Syracuse is not good in the ACC, you got a real problem.
Yep.
Notre Dame had a stretch of really playing well. It's obviously a premier brand, no matter what sport you're talking about. They held on to Mike Bray. Love the guy, but they held on to that man for a little bit too long. The point is, the programs that need to be good in this league, like, we're playing this game of yo-yo, and we haven't gotten them to be good at the same time.
You're right. Wake Forest is another one, and I love Steve Forbes, but Wake Forest, even though if we go back into the heyday of the ACC, Wake Forest spent a lot of that in like 7th and 8th place. I remember a lot of like, oh man, we're going to beat Wake. We got no problem beating Wake Forest, but they've also been at times awesome. It's hard. I mean, would they made the NCAA tournament once in how long? Right? They need to be better too. But you're right about Syracuse, who hasn't been good. Even at the end of the Boeheim era, they haven't been good. It's a pedigreed program. Syracuse is probably a top 20 all-time college basketball destination. And, I mean, they are one of those teams that we talked about being one of the worst in Power 4, Power 5 college basketball. Let me just throw one more thing at you.
Let me just quick, Adam, sure. on the point about Syracuse, because this is another at-large point about the league versus others. The environments, the home environments in this league are really bad. And Syracuse, like I was up there earlier in the year for the 100th playing of Syracuse at Georgetown, and I know both programs are down.
Yeah.
But Syracuse, when and I understand Boeheim's not there anymore, but even with those bad teams under Boeheim, they were still turning out 20,000 to the Carrier Dome to see that team play. It's not like that anymore. You go down the line, Adam, the environments, which is the future of this sport. The future of college basketball is about pairing the best brands, the best matchups in great venues. The SEC, the Big 12, they have great venues, great turnouts, great environments. The Big East has a handful of really great environments. The ACC does not have that, and it's really hurting the league.
Yeah, there are, and I think part of that. I mean, Syracuse would be good if the team was good. The Yum Center would be great, and I think the Yum Center is probably pretty good, even unless it's Kenny Payne coaching and they're 3 and whatever. It would be better. I think if these teams were better. I think when Clemson's good, Little John's a great spot, and Little John has probably been good of late. But I go back to, we need Georgia Tech to be better. We need NC State to be better. We need Wake Forest to be better. Virginia, we'll see. I have my doubts about how, is the program what Tony Bennett made it, or is it more like what Jeff Jones was when he was the coach there, where, hey, there were times they were really good, but half the time they were just kind of okay. Is that what Virginia basketball is? Virginia Tech, I mean, I'm not sure. I think the Castle, when they're good, I think the Castle is a great spot, but I think you're right about that. Very quickly about college football. I think it is a reality, even though Jim Phillips might have been wrong to say it publicly. I think it's a reality that college football runs everything. And I said, this, by the way, the same thing about Bruce Pearl and SEC basketball coaching hires like 2 weeks ago. I'm like, they took some chances and it paid off. The ACC won't do that. There's zero chance that Bruce Pearl would have been hired by an ACC school. No chance at all, anywhere. And like the ACC is, I use this example, and I'm completely rambling here. We tout the academic prowess of the league way more. I laugh. It's great, but man, we make a point to let everybody know how great academically we are, as though the general public cares about how good you are academically. They want to know how many games you won, but I think that is indicative of some of the issues. But I think you have to basically say football is the king, because it is the king. It's making all the money.
Yeah, I understand that, but what I would argue is it's better to be the best at something than mediocre at a handful of things. And I think you can do two things at once. And you basically allowed the premier basketball product, the premier basketball brand, you allowed that to die on the vine as you went all in on football. And I guess my point is, why couldn't you do two things at the same time, with the endeavor of trying to preserve what you had in terms of your basketball product? And that's where, look, that's your point about the academics. Like, that's where the ACC has zero identity. Like, the SEC, outside of being what it is as a football conference, et cetera, the SEC has had its identity as sort of this rebellious in the landscape prior to NI, this rebellious league, professionalizing, NFL South. That has it. The Big Ten. I think we can all characterize what the Big Ten is in terms of identity. The ACC has zero, and expansion has hurt that. It has, I think, corrupted that. But I also think this change in leadership has muddled the waters in terms of you had a guy who was asleep at the wheel at the end of his tenure in John Swofford, and then you had a gentleman in Jim Phillips, who I think is a good man and a smart man, but who really didn't understand the job description, did not understand exactly what he was taking over, had no real connection in terms of what made this league tick for all of those years, and sort of thought he knew, and he just went chasing dollars and thought he knew that how he was going to be able to do that. And in the intervening years, the basketball product has completely lost its footing.
I could talk to you forever because you are an expert not only in basketball but in life. Chris Spatola, ESPN, Sirius XM, Chris_Spatola on X, on Twitter. Sir, it's good to catch up. We'll do it again soon.
Yeah, you too, Adam. Be well, man.
You got it. Man, I am always fascinated by conversations with that guy. I don't know why I don't call him more.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Oh, Chris is tremendous.